All right, all right, all right. What is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, Melba for Miami, Melba for Justice, and it is time for another Mondays with Melba. Super excited for the discussion today. Before we dive in, just super quickly want to center the fact that this is week two of jury selection of the three men that murdered Ahmaud Arbery. So just continue to keep the family in your thoughts and prayers. Also, want to highlight that this is election time, especially in Miami Beach, City of Miami. I'm supporting Raquel Pacheco for City of Miami Beach Commissioner, as well as Mike Hepburn and Quinn Smith for City of Miami Commission. So, y'all, whoever you vote for, whatever you do, just make sure to use your vote and use your vote because this is super critical, especially where we are right now in this country. All right, so diving in, it is Mental Health Awareness Day. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so I brought on two amazing ladies, starting with Yolanda McCrae, who is a nurse practitioner, and Camilla Cross, who is a licensed clinical social worker, to talk about, number one, the work that they do in our communities, but also to talk about the barriers that women of color or people that are under resourced end up facing when seeking healthcare. So, ladies, thank you so much for coming on with Mondays with Melba.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes,
So
thank you so much, Melba, for having
Yay.
us. It's going to be a
awesome,
great
awesome.
session.
So let's start off with you, Yolanda. Could you share a little bit about yourself, your current work, your current projects, and what you've been doing in this space when it comes to healthcare, especially with regards to Black women?
Absolutely. So, again, my name is Yolanda McCrae. I am a nurse practitioner who is certified in perinatal mental health. And what that encompasses is really we deal with pregnant and postpartum moms who are experiencing any type of mood or anxiety or disorder. So, postpartum depression, history of bipolar disorder, anxiety, all of those things. And our main mission is to really bring awareness, bring education to it, and mostly increase the diagnoses so that we can increase the treatment. Right now, especially in underserved communities, our Black and brown communities, our communities that are more impoverished and disadvantaged, we know that they're not getting the true treatment that they need to get speaking with therapists to really understand what's going on with their process, which honestly surrounds adjustment disorder for a lot of them. But what I find too is sometimes medication does need to be added to help with whatever diagnosis is going through, and they need to understand that that's okay. We need to normalize talking about maternity and mental health because when people think about maternal anything, they're thinking positive. They're supposed to come out and they're supposed to love this baby, and this is the most exciting time in their life. But what we truly find is that moms that may not be able to connect sometimes, moms that are struggling, especially in the Black community, because of the fact that we have already been it's a role. You're the mama bear. You're supposed to be able to tack everything on and take it inside. So you're not allowed to say that I'm overwhelmed or I'm frustrated in this role. You're supposed to kind of tough it through. And that's where I see a lot of our patients are very hesitant to say, I knew I felt kind of off, but I didn't know if this was how I was supposed to feel or if, this was normal or if, if I was really overreacting because we don't talk about it. It's not something that is expressed. And even in our mommy groups, everything is about the baby. So that loss of sense, that loss of self is really under addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true, so true. Especially when we think about the case of Andrea Yates, probably about like mid 2000s or so. That was sort of the first time it came to the public sphere. Now, Andrea Yates was a Texas woman who murdered her like three or four children, a baby, like literally a baby, all the way up to like, maybe 7, 8 years old because of postpartum depression. So that was the first time we really started to talk about that as a country. But then again, the stigma around mental health, especially when it comes to religion and communities of color, make it difficult for people to often seek the help they need. So thank you for that, Yolanda. Camilla, moving to you, can you talk a little bit about your work, what you're doing, and sort of your vantage point when it comes to this work?
Most definitely. And I want to thank you, Melva, for allowing a platform to where women can come out and actually feel open enough to trust people with their vulnerability. Because like Yolanda was saying, we pretty much as women have to wear that S on our chest, right? So we really do neglect the self-care. It's about kind of everyone but us at certain times. And we have to try to find a healthy balance. And my population that I serve, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm in private practice. My business is called Your Worth LLC. My clientele is pretty much women between the ages of 25 to about 45, but I have male clients as well. I specialize in anxiety and depression. What I've been finding is that, like Yolanda was saying, is a lot of times women don't know how to say I'm not okay, right? They don't know how to go ahead and seek the help. And when they come, sometimes they're even hesitant on letting people in on saying, you know what, because they feel as if they should be able to manage life when sometimes things are unmanageable. When you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety. I think the big thing is to let people know it's okay to be undone. It's okay not to have all the answers. And I feel like this platform actually shows strong women, right? Because we're strong women, but we have, we're not perfect. We're not perfect. We've been through our traumas. We've been through underlying things that we definitely know has to be addressed. So who better to give it than us, right? So I definitely love what I do. I find it to be an appointment. I know we all are appointed to this position, right? Because I get a little spiritual sometimes, it is definitely an appointment that we were chosen to give a lot of what we've experienced back. And it's an amazing feeling when you realize that us, what we do, what we go through, a lot of times it's for someone else, right? So I love this. So I'm very excited about the conversation we're going to have. Oh, and I'm sorry, just one more thing that I'm doing. So I'm actually starting a nonprofit. It's in the developmental stages right now, called Beauties and Blazers. I'm actually doing an event on November the 20th. That's kind of geared towards the population that I've been attracting lately. And I realize it's the laws of attraction because it's a lot of women, professional women, presented beautiful, right? We're very beautiful on the outside. We got it together. They own businesses. I got teachers. I got therapists. I got lawyers. And on the inside, though, there's things that we haven't processed. So I know that that's not easy to, allow your vulnerability to be presented on the stage. So I kind of definitely want to find a niche for that. So that's what Beauties and Blazers is all about. Women having a holistic view of life, and definitely touching on the mental health part of it, the financial growth part of it, being a business owner, all that good stuff.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Camila. And for sure, I'm going to push that flyer out through the network. So folks are interested in attending, of course, going to definitely hold space for you to give the information of the Eventbrite link and all that at the end of our session. But I'll also put it up on my social media as well. So Yolanda, I'm going to come back to you. Wanted to kind of explore a little bit more about the barriers that women of color face in seeking care. And, we're talking about Camilla having this really cool event with her professional women and all that. And you would think, well, listen, professional women, you've got the hookup, people. How come you're not seeking this help? So what's holding us back, not only within ourselves, but also systemically from getting the help we need?
It's actually twofold. Part of it is definitely the stigma that still surrounds mental health, and the fact that as a woman, you're supposed to have it together. So I think that making that initial call, and when we do, for example, our consult calls, I usually ask, like, what prompted you? What was the final push to say, I need to get some help? And the unfortunate reality is that a lot of the women say, I lost it, or I felt like I was going crazy. And what we're trying to do is really try to address and get to women before they get to that point. Specifically, I honestly feel like there is not enough screening done, especially for women that are maybe receiving Medicaid and not necessarily going through the process where they're getting screened appropriately for depression. You asking a woman if have you ever been depressed before? nine times out of 10, they're going to say no. Asking a woman, have you felt overwhelmed in the last 24 hours? Have you felt like there were some things that, you know, you just could not manage? Have you felt like you're going crazy? Because in reality, you know, depression has such a large umbrella, but when you truly boil down to some of the actual signs and symptoms, you know, have you felt like, you know, you wake up but you sleep and get out of the bed? And what I describe to a lot of the women, you feel like you have on a weighted jacket, and you can't just take it off. It doesn't just come off like that. So putting some more parameters in place where we get the screening done, and then be able to segue into the appropriate therapy. So everyone is not deemed appropriate to work with women who have, you know, either perinatal mental health disorders that were previous to even when they got pregnant. So you do want to find a professional that can really help and understand the parameters that you're going through, because not only are you dealing with the hormonal shift, you're also dealing with sometimes people that are already on medication decided to take themselves off when they got pregnant, and then said, you know what, I'll be fine and I'm self-sustaining right now. So I think that honestly, one of the things that I thought would be great is if we could infuse the Edinburgh postnatal depression screen into the WIC system. We know that that system already cares for moms that have been identified as disadvantaged. So let's infuse that screening into there, and also link them with a therapist that can help them if they seem positive. I think that would definitely increase the amount of diagnoses as well as treatment, because it needs to be both ways. We can't just say, okay, yes, mom, we think that you're at risk for postpartum depression, but then not refer them to someone that has availability, because that's the other thing. You know, you can say, okay, I'm going to refer you, but then there's a huge wait list. So then mom is like, you know what, it really wasn't that important anyway. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to pray about it. You know, I'm going to try to reach these support systems, and those support systems may still not be what you need. So getting true, actual medical professional help is going to be the best way. And I think that we can definitely do better. One of my missions is to start a perinatal mental health initiative in somebody's city. So if anybody listening wants to give me a chance to present, because I think that our communities are underserved when it comes to mental health with our moms, and it's truly because there's not enough education. There's not enough people that want to discuss it, because it is like an oxymoron. Mom shouldn't be depressed. Mom shouldn't commit suicide. And moms have experienced postpartum depression, and the numbers are not going to get any lower, especially during the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Camilla, what are your thoughts on this? What have you seen when it comes to barriers with regards to healthcare, both external and internal?
Yeah, I actually worked as a medical social worker for about 7 years. So what Yolanda was saying aligns very much with what we see with women of color, because there's a stigma that in itself with women are scared to even go and seek medical assistance sometimes, because we were talking, it's funny, I was talking with someone about how our pain threshold, for whatever reason, this mysteriously is so much higher than our counterparts. So even if we go ahead and have a concern, it's seen as a complaint. Right. So a lot of times women are like, you know what, I'm just not going to address the issue at all. And I think the way if you see a problem, it definitely should be a solution. And when I think about mothers who actually are having these issues, to just go ahead and tell them, hey, you should go ahead and seek therapy, and not align them with the right therapist, because it is all about the fit. It is, you know, some people go to therapy, they say, no, therapy's not for me. No, it just might not have been the fit. So I don't want us to just give up on therapy because it didn't, you know, that first therapist just didn't understand where you were at the time, right? And even sometimes where we are at the time may not be where we are now. So definitely seeking the right fit. I think a good way, if anybody's out there who works in the medical field, is to go ahead and actually sometimes make the appointment for the patient. Because if she's already struggling with depression, anxiety, having to figure out how to deal with this newborn, going home with this newborn child, that's not going to be a priority to her. It's just not. So sometimes to take the initiative and actually go that extra mile, which is not even that, let's be honest, it's not going to be a whole day's worth of work. It might be an extra 5-10 minutes, and align that appointment for that person. Because you know, it's really sad, because the suicide rate is very high. And a lot of times we just don't understand that depression is real. Will we have a depressed moment? Yes, right? We're going to have sadness. Things are going to happen. I always tell my clients feelings are to be had, but it's all about how long you stay in that, right? Like you can have a moment, but don't make it your movement. Don't make it your movement. And I think it's really sad because sometimes we see things, right? Even on the outside, we'll have our support systems and they'll say, girl, what you complaining about? You all right? You got your husband, you got your kids, you got your job. What's the problem? What's the problem? Like this woman is suffering, like, so sometimes we can't go ahead, we shouldn't shut down when someone tells us, like women or men, whoever, they tell us, listen, I'm having a moment. Like we should really take that seriously because we don't know how far along or sometimes what that even took to admit that.
Absolutely. And then, okay, so that takes me in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
So wanting to know the kind of the role of social media. So for instance, you've been seeing more people posting about their mental health and self-care and topics like that on social media. But then also sometimes you'll see somebody put a post up and you're like, "Boo, are you okay?"
Not well, yeah.
And so if you read a post like that, like what are some things you can do to help provide support for that person or to tell them like, listen, you need to center your mental health right now. You should see a therapist or you should call so-and-so. Like, so what would you advise someone to do if they see a post on social media by someone in their network, not necessarily a bestie, but somebody in their network that seems to be showing signs of having a mental health mini crisis?
Well, for them to even, I look at it, for them to even make a post like this, to me, it's a cry for help. It's a cry for help because someone who, and not to be extreme, right? Because we go ahead and we do an assessment for suicide, and sometimes it's just a thought, and then sometimes people are gun ho, this is what I'm going to do. But for someone to make a post, it's a cry for help. So it might just be a matter of inboxing the person, DMing the person, all the social media stuff, right? And saying, hey, do you need someone to talk to? Like I've seen a classmate of mine. We weren't close. I didn't really know her, but I DM'd her and I was like, at this point, would you want someone to talk to? I couldn't take her on as a client, right? Because it was too close. But I'm just like, there's outlets. I wanted her to know that there is outlets and sometimes you're not alone, right? Because in a sense, I think she had suffered a major loss. And I'm like, I understand her. I kind of, I normalized it. I kind of shared I was transparent with her about my struggles a bit, just to let her know that she's not alone. Because a lot of times when you're in a state of being, you think you're the only one that's going through that. And now I'm never downplaying anyone else's trauma, but sometimes someone can help you through that trauma through their trauma. So it's definitely when you see something like that, a friend, even if it's just a stranger, sometimes you never know what that one word that you say can save someone's life.
Yeah, super true. Super true. Yolanda, what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. I actually have personal experience with that because I have this, I guess, I feel like people post things and there's always intention behind it. So when I look at the posts that people make, I actually had a friend and the post was it wasn't graphic or distant or it just seemed it's out of the trend, out of the norm from what they've usually been posting. And I picked up the phone and I noticed that, some of the things that you've been posting are a little bit sad, okay. And he actually was able to confide in me and I was able to, I'm following. So the one thing about it is if you do see something or notice something, I was able to follow up and get him the help that he needed, refer him to someone that actually make the appointment. I think that a lot of we don't want to investigate something because you don't want to be held responsible for it. So, if I make that phone call, the thing too is that you don't want to not make the phone call. You don't want to not say anything because that's why a lot of people are in the situations that they're in now because, if one person just said, hey, how are you feeling? It makes a world of difference. And speaking with people that are depressed or felt like they were in a silo or in a box on their own, having someone, just one person ask or notice that there was a difference. I know that the people that usually post on Facebook religiously have stopped posting. And I'll send a message, and sometimes I get a response, and then, and sometimes people just say, I'm taking a break. And I think social media breaks are important as well for your mental health. But, I think it's definitely important to say something. And a lot of women, especially if they're in a compromised position as far as domestic violence, the post may not scream, I need help, but it may be something else that you've observed, and that's why I think it's so great to know some of the signs and symptoms of depression, and even pick up on things that are out of the norm, especially for people in your close circle. Because it's very hard, from the women that I speak with, it's very hard to say, I'm being abused, either mentally or physically, because you don't want that stigma, because then it turns to, oh, you're still there. When it comes in, it becomes very accusing, and women you don't want to be placed in that environment, especially when you're trying to deal with all of these other things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I definitely say reach out to the person.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely great advice, right? Use the DMs, right? Use the the inbox feature, and reach out and be like, hey, what's going on with you? Or just a kind word sometimes can be the thing that will shift someone's mindset and prevent a tragedy from happening. But Yolanda, you touched on something very important that I want to pivot to, which is the fact that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so I wanted to take a moment, first of all, to say her name. Courtney Cox. She is an African-American female attorney in Atlanta who was killed last week by her abusive boyfriend. So this is just another reminder that domestic violence does not see race. It does not see ethnicity. It does not see wealth or poverty. It is just an evil thing that exists. So in pivoting to that, and let me just talk about a few stats really quick. More than 40% of Black women will experience DV in their lifetime. And this is according to the Institute of Women's Public Research Status of Black Women in the United States. In comparison, 31% of all women in America will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Another report from the National Center for Victims of Crime found that more than half, 53.8% of Black women have experienced psychological abuse by an intimate partner. And while 41% of Black women experience physical abuse. And more disturbingly, Black women are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered at the hands of intimate partners. And that is 2.5 times more likely than their white counterparts to be murdered by an intimate partner. And also 92% of these homicide cases, again, is somebody that they know very closely. And so with stats like these, the Black Women's Health Project determined that domestic violence is the #1 health crisis facing Black women. So I pivot to, back to you, and Camilla, I'll start with you and then move back to you, Yolanda. When it comes to domestic violence and resources, what should we be doing to help support and empower women or people, right? Because it's not just women, it can be men, it could be, people that identify as non-binary, whatever. Anyone can be face domestic violence in their relationships. So what are some ways that we as friends, as community, as supporters can help someone that's in that situation?
I would say two things come to mind. Women, because men get abused, we're saying, across the board. If someone even kind of musters up the gut to talk to you about the situation, don't blame the victim. It always troubled me that the victim carries the guilt of the perpetrator. And a lot of times because I think what happens is people want to believe that it can never be them, right? I would never let someone do this to me, and they do all of that, right? But abuse doesn't start with a slap. It starts with the psychological abuse. It starts with the emotional abuse, the financial abuse. And what happens is a buildup. And before this woman knows it, she's in a cycle that she didn't even realize she's in. So it always troubles me how the question is, why didn't she leave? People don't even realize that usually when a homicide occurs is when the woman's trying to leave. So I just think we need to be more educated and sympathetic to our, when someone actually musters up the gut to even believe or understand they're in an abusive relationship. Because sometimes people don't even realize they're in an abusive relationship. It might be something that they grew up seeing, right? So it's just so much things that can happen to where abuse is not even recognized for one, or abuse is tolerated, right? So I just think we just need to, have a more understanding, and just be there, be more sympathetic towards the women or men who disclose this to us.
Absolutely. Yolanda, your thoughts?
I definitely agree with Camille. I think as well that having more spotlighting or marketing, if that's the right word for it, for resources. Because being pregnant, I think for the moms that we serve, they're already in a vulnerable state. So when you're with someone that is abusive, it makes the state exacerbated, because now not only can they be physically abusive, they're also mentally abusive. But the moms are thinking, okay, I can't have this baby by myself. So I'm weighing the two odds, risk versus benefit. Do I need this person here with me to try to through this pregnancy? Am I going to tolerate, what's going on? And then it goes to, it's not that bad, So then you start to minimize the abuse. But I think that if there were more publications or even, information about what you're really trying to get out. Because, most times if you're not calling 911, you're trying to call a shelter, depending on how many kids you have, because you have to think about moving an entire unit. So, again, people think about escaping or leaving. Moms are thinking about all these parameters, and unfortunately, better option sometimes in their mind is to stay. They don't do it all the time. So again, you have you minimize. There are going to be good times, and then those good times kind of fix out the times where they were abusive, and then the cycle starts again. So I think really getting a strong system, and it's so deeply seated, because you have to really look at why the abuser feels okay, being abusive, and then how are we getting to the root of the problem? Is this something that has been allowed, so it's kind of normalized? Did you see this happen to mom, grandma? And so it also deals with the psyche. Is this something normal? Is this a hard stop for me? Am I going to tolerate, mental abuse versus, as long as he's not hitting me, he can talk to me any kind of way. So we have to put emphasis on the fact that both of those things can harm you. Having someone constantly beat at your conscience and your mindset, and it's debilitating. And we don't realize that all of the things that are happening mentally will eventually become physical. And I don't think that we do a good enough job making that connection for women. And it needs to start early. It needs to start very early, because even in high school, I think that there should be education about, boundaries, parameters, what is okay and what isn't okay. And that's women hitting men, men hitting women. When do you take yourself out of the situation? And identify that it's toxic. So really giving some more education and resources readily to the community. Not just, we can do great meetings like this, but what happens next month? The holidays are coming up, which are definitely triggers. Financial triggers. I don't have enough money to get stuff for the kids. You haven't working. I haven't been working. All of those things really stem up the situation.
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely on point to both of you, because the reality is there are so many aspects that go into whether or not to stay in the relationship, including financial. So yeah, not only are you going to move that family unit, but also you have to first, last, and security. You got, school time's coming up. Okay, I've got to get the children, clothes for school. You don't want to have to reach back out to your abuser to ask them for money to be able to take care of the kids, because then again, that becomes a source of manipulation, and then you also have the societal influences. So again, he's not, we haven't seen you with any black eyes, so it can't be that bad. Or how men are, or how men can be, or whatever the case may be, or how she gets when she drinks, like, just look past it, it'll be fine. I had to endure so much more with your father, your grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. Or then you have the religious aspect of folks who are like, the Bible says that, women submit them to your husbands, and et cetera, and that once you get married, it's for life, even if the guy is abusing you 10 different ways from sunrise, right? So, there are all these other forces that are at play that will cause someone who you'd think like, hey, you're wealthy, you're living your best life. Like, why are you staying in this situation? You have more resources than the average person. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't. So that's, why I kind of look at DV as the great equalizer, because it doesn't matter where you're from, your abuse may look different than the person next to you, but it still is going to have the same long-term outcome with regards to your kids growing up seeing you being abused and thinking that that's okay to do to other people or to be in those types of relationships, and then of course the emotional aspect of and the draining aspect of you trying to live your life plus live with abuse at the same time, which is not, all of that is not living. Anyway, so I'm going to get off my soapbox on that one. But I want to turn it over to both of you ladies for sort of the final word to talk about any pending projects that you're working on, ways that people can get in touch with you. Because again, we're talking about resources, and both of you are tremendous resources in our community. So I would love for you to share your, social media or however you'd like people to get in touch with you. And Yolanda, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Melva. Again, my name is Yolanda McCrae, and I am the co-founder for Brighter Days Perinatal Service. So what we do, again, is care for perinatal and postpartum mothers who are experiencing a postpartum, any type of mood or anxiety disorder. And one of the special populations I definitely want to mention are moms that are going through infertility or women going through infertility, because that can definitely also be a trigger for domestic violence, not only physically but mentally. Because women feel, it can be a very lonely feeling, and I definitely want to let you know that we do assist those mothers as well. So we have our nurse practitioner, which is myself, but also have a therapist that is certified in perinatal mental health services. So it's a specialized service. You can follow us on Instagram at Brighter Days Perinatal CTR, and our website is www.brighterdays.pc.com. You can schedule a 10-minute free consult. We'll definitely, we don't force medication on people, but what we do want to get out there is education. Get the help, if not with us, with someone else. And most likely the support system that is around that mom, encourage them. If you see something, say, if they are not acting like they usually are, or you see something that's off, don't say, okay, this is not a good time, maybe I shouldn't mention it. Mention it, because maybe they're waiting on you to, either bring something out, discuss something, talk to them. They need you to reach out. So we definitely want you to do that and reach out to us, because we're here.
Great. Thank you, Yolanda. And over to you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I knew you were ready for me. So I wanted to first reach out and give the 800 number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I looked it up while we were here. So it's 800-799-7233. I am actually accepting new clients. I do therapy services, as we stated earlier, with anxiety and depression. With domestic violence, the statistics have shown that, of course, with experiencing that, depression and anxiety is definitely something that a lot of these women experience, as well as suicide. Sometimes, unfortunately, women don't see a way out, and they kind of go for that ultimate way out. So I want, before that's even a thought, definitely reach out to us, find your therapist that's the best fit. With me, you can actually email me. My email address is yourworthllc@gmail.com. I actually do have an Instagram page, but for the Beauty in Blazers event, you can definitely like my Instagram page at Beauties in Blazers. Again, the event will be November the 20th here in Miami Gardens. It's on Eventbrite under Beauties and Blazers. I'll see if maybe I can find the link for you guys. But again, at the end of the day, you don't have to, no one should suffer in silence. You're not alone. You are not alone. There has been somebody who has experienced, I'm not going to say identically to what you've been going through, but you're not alone. You're not crazy. You don't deserve it. There's so many things that, unfortunately, our brain, I tell people our brains are kind of primitive, right? It's because we will actually get stuck in our depression because it becomes normal. Like our brains will get comfortable in the state of depression. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not. So sometimes once you realize that you need help, it's okay to seek help. It's okay not to have all the answers. None of us are perfect. All of us, these beautiful women you see here on this panel, we all have a story. And there's so much power in our story. So sometimes it's just about letting your story out. Letting your story out helps, be okay with getting the healing that you need. A lot of times, especially as a mother, if you don't do it for yourself, definitely do it for your kids, because they don't go off of what we say, they go off of what they see. And even when we present the way we present, our kids know us. They see that brokenness that didn't get addressed, so definitely reach out, find the therapist that's going to give you the best fit for what you're dealing with, and seek help.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Camilla. And at the end of the day, we have to always remember that, this is not like you go to the mall, or back when we actually went outside, or you order something on Amazon or whatever, you try it on, and sometimes it's not the right fit, so you send it back and you get another size, right? You don't say that's it, I'm not ever buying clothes again.
Exactly.
Well, sometimes you do, but that's a separate issue. But anyway, but yeah, but that's a whole other show. But but the reality is, if we have that mindset of like, oh, it didn't work out, let me try again, the same mindset has to apply to therapy, right? Like maybe that first therapist you went to, y'all just didn't vibe, right? And it's fine. It is what it is. Not everybody's for everybody, but you have to keep trying, because you're doing this for your health, you're doing this for your family's health, and you're doing this for your community, because if you're not in it, the community suffers a loss too. So it's much bigger than just yourself. But anyway, Yolanda, Camilla, thank you so much for the hard work that you are doing in our community to make sure that people are connected with services. I salute you. I support you. And I hope that we can do this discussion again to talk about other pressing issues when it comes to health sometime soon.
Yes, I would like that.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having us on. This was great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, audience out there, for tuning in.
All right, y'all. And that brings another Mondays with Melba to a wrap. Thank you again for tuning in. We will be back next week with another installment, probably to talk about Election Day, because it's about that time. But anyway, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing y'all again soon. Bye.
Bye.